Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me today in this live podcast. Our subject today is not about a health condition, not about a disease, but about the facts about drinking smoothies for your health. Today, we're going to talk about, what happens to your body when you mix frozen vegetables, yogurt, some kale, goji berries, mushrooms, pea protein, vitamin D, cacao. Don't forget your cacao chips. Um, and did I mention the kale? And grind it all up in a blender and drink it for your breakfast. We're going to talk about what could go wrong with this wonderful sounding concoctions that people create on their own and healthy alternatives you could do instead. And of course, we're going to bust all the myths here. The myth busting is what we could have called this show, the myths of smoothies, but I tried not to make it too negative. So we could get some smoothie girls to join. I don't know if you're there. Smoothie girls are basically, usually young women who want to stay thin, have smoothies and coffee as their main source of nutrients. So what are the issues that could go wrong with mixing up these smoothies and having them for the morning? Well, number one, they're cold, particularly if you're putting ice in them or using frozen vegetables. Nothing cold is good for the human body. I mean, you have to understand cold coagulates. It makes the blood thicker, makes your bile thicker. It even can congest your thyroid hormones and even lower your metabolism. Cold lowers your overall metabolism. Every organ in your body likes to stay nice and warm. And if the liver gets too cold, the bile gets too thick. And, if you put cold food on top of your stomach acids, they go out. And even your pancreas can reduce its deficiency if the body gets cold. Nothing in the body likes to be cold. I mean, just so you know, according to your anatomy, there is only one organ. I don't want to be corrected here, that does prefer a cool temperature, and that is the man's testes, which are why they're outside the body. But besides that, we all need warmth, and all food really should be at least room temperature. And for many people, it needs to be warm, particularly if you're a cold person and you have cold hands and feet. Then why are you having cold foods? It's only going to make your circulation worse, make your digestion worse. And of course, poor digestion can lead to constipation. So you're going to have a chain link of problems based on just the fact that it's cold. Second, it's really such terrible food combining. We can look at all ancient healthcare systems. They all talked extensively about food combining. So it's really perfected science. If we look at ancient history, if we look at Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and even Hippocrates. I mean, he wasn't the best herbalist, but he sure knew about his food combining and his three humors based on Ayurveda. But he knew a lot about food combining. Now, there's people that say that he mostly learned that from the Ayurveda in India, but he was Hippocrates. And we do, as medical doctors, they have to take the Hippocratic Oath, but they don't have to read it because it's quite extensive what he wrote. And quite a lot he wrote about food combining. So you could look that up, but let me just give you a basic understanding of common food combining mistakes. Well, one, fruit is your biggest issue. When you're having fruit, technically you shouldn't even have fruit with other fruits. Having a sour fruit and a sweet fruit together is considered poor food combining. And in fact, most, if you get strict on food combining, it says have fruit only with the same fruit. Now, you could have two melons together. You could have apples and pears together. You could have 2-3 berries together, but that's as far as it goes. And then you start breaking food combining rules, even mixing melons and bananas and things together. Now, there are a few vegetables, a fruit that can function like vegetables, like the avocado. He's kind of can go both ways, if you know what I mean. He can hang out with fruit, can hang out with the veggies, and he's okay. And there are a few exceptions. But overall, fruit doesn't go with anything. Um, except that avocado. Fruit, and definitely fruit doesn't go with a grain. A grain. So if you're putting oats in your protein powder with fruit, that's one of the worst food combining, because you could do this little test in your house. I mean, you can just get some oatmeal, put a little water in it, put some blueberries in the top, and just leave it. And you could do another bowl of oatmeal with no blueberries or strawberries in the top and leave it for a few days. Well, the one with the fruit will start molding real fast, and even stuff will start growing all over it, because the fruit is going to feed any type of bacteria. Of course, you'd have to have organic oats, and you'd have to have organic vegetables to do that. Only organic food will really mold and go bad. So it's pretty well known that fruit and grains is a bad combination. But the worst combination is your fruit plus your dairy. Now, there are a few exceptions, like you can put butter and dates and a few things like that. There's always little exceptions to rules. But yogurt and fruit, that's like mixing vinegar and baking soda together. You know, in school, when they used to do the little volcano, and they had the baking soda inside, and you poured the vinegar in the top, and then it bubbled over like a volcano. Well, that's what happens when you mix a citrus, for example, lemon, lime, orange, but even a sour fruit like some blueberries, with with uh, with yogurt or milk. So fruit and dairy is possibly the worst food combining. But even fruit and vegetables is not recommended. Again, there are a few exceptions. Avocado, he kind of goes both ways. He can hang out with the veggies, no problem. And there's a few like lemon, lime, few citrus can go with veggies, which is why a lot of dishes have a little lemon, little lime extra. It doesn't hurt it. So if you were to just have some vegetable juice and put a little lemon and lime in it, that's okay. And celery, amazingly, can hang out with fruit as well and not create a problem. But besides that, fruit and vegetables don't go together, the bad food combining, and fruit and grains is kind of create fermentation for fruit and yogurt fermentation. And what happens when you have fermenting? Burping, farting, flatulence, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, even candida. And the cold almost makes the environment more conducive, because it's creating more mucus and phlegm. When you have cold food, you create, like I said, congestion, but often respiratory congestion. I have a lot of people, they get respiratory congestion problems and snoring and can't breathe at night and wake up. The doctor puts them on the CPAP machine. But when I get a hold of them, I have to diagnose why. And the most common reason is eating ice cream at night, cold yogurt dishes at night, cold coconut yogurt. It's always the same. They're having cold foods, which is, creating this cold environment, and then their respiratory and nasal passages are getting congested, and the lungs definitely doesn't like cold. We all know that. It likes warm and moist environment. It doesn't like cold and dry like the winter. And so then they can't breathe at night well, because they're having their ice cream. So I know people on CPAP machines that literally got off the CPAP machine within weeks just by stopping the cold food like ice cream at night. So, you're drinking ice cream made from dairy, and then you're putting blueberries in it. You get the point. You're creating a lot of problems. And, everybody comes to me with digestive problems. And I've had multiple people say that their bloating was resolved after they stopped their smoothie. I remember one young lady complained that she said, her bloating was so bad all day, she didn't know it was her smoothie, that men opened the door for her and said congratulations, because they thought she was pregnant. And she was doing a couple smoothies a day. because I guess she was a smoothie girl. And once she stopped the smoothies and just had some warm food, her bloating went away. But I thought that was quite funny that she was so upset that men were congratulating her on being pregnant because her bloating was so bad. So, that's the fermentation that's taking place in there from mixing all these things together. And what happens besides your bloating and gassy and things like that, it becomes indigestible. And okay, say you leave out the dairy and the oats and you just mix up a bunch of stuff and you're not really bloated, but it's still more than likely indigestible. I mean, the body really has to separate out a lot of the grains, the carbs, we could call it, the protein and the fat, because they have different systems and different enzymes to digest it. So blending them all together kind of complicates things for the body. And, people really have serious digestive problems find, if they just, maybe eat their grain first, then they eat their cooked vegetables, and then they eat their protein, you know, um, then, in a certain order and just one at a time, they do better. So that's because it's easier on your system if you're just eating your protein when your digestion's strong and your stomach acids are there. And then, eating the easier to digest foods last, like the steamed vegetables. And of course, many people have discovered mixing fruit with their oatmeal creates bloating and gas. Many people determine this on their own. And many people came back to me and said their bloating got a lot better once they stopped having strawberries on their oatmeal. So it depends on how sensitive your digestive system is. Some people can slam these smoothies down and not get the bloating, but it's still going to be undigestible, which is why most people, after they have smoothies, aren't hungry for hours because your body's trying to digest it. Furthermore, many of these ingredients people throw in there, are basically fad-based, like the expensive Manuka honey. Nobody should be buying honey from another country. You're supposed to buy honey locally, so you get the benefits of the local honey, not from another country at 5 times the price. Goji berries wasn't even a superfood. That was just marketed. It's actually a nightshade. And cacao is a stimulant. It has its own caffeine in it, which is, of course, one reason we all get a little hooked on the chocolate. It has a kind of addictive quality to it. It was just promoted by some guys trying to sell cacao nibs and cacao as a superfood. That's when they first started using the word superfood liberally. Now everything's a freaking superfood when I go to the supermarket. Cacao is not a superfood. It's inflammatory, and many people told me their joint pain increased within a week of stopping their chocolate. Now, of course, most chocolate has sugar in it, but people buy the cacao nibs where they don't have the sugar, which is better. But when you're buying your chocolate bar, even though it's 70% cacao, this isn't a very inflammatory and stimulating. I've had people tell me, hey, they just were sleeping better when they stopped their little piece of chocolate every night. And some people, if you're very heavy and overweight and, maybe you won't affect it. But if you're thin, then, this is going to affect you more. Other problems with these smoothies, ingredients, is like mushrooms. People are now just dumping mushrooms in because that's the new fad. If you're up on social media healthcare, goji berries is kind of old. Manuka honey is old. Turmeric's old, even though people are still throwing it in their smoothies. Chocolate's still going strong because everybody got hooked on it when it was a superfood. But the new one is just throw in the mushrooms, the cordyceps, the reishi. Oh, who cares what they do? All mushrooms are good. Aren't mushrooms good? Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, first of all, in herbalism, mushrooms are like the icing on the cake, kind of like basmas or minerals for the Ayurveda doctor. There's a formula, and then, you can add a little mushroom to it to have a better effect. And when I was in Taiwan for many years, we used to have a lot of giant alcohol tinctures, and they'd throw in a bunch of herbs, and then they would throw mushrooms in on top. It's like the gravy, the icing, they're not just taking mushrooms straight, and they never really combine 2-3 mushrooms together. Chinese herbalist, I mean, usually just one is enough, and there's an objective, there's a goal boost your immunity, help your cardiovascular system, and things like this. But there's no reason to be having 5 mushrooms in a powder and throw it in a smoothie. Um, and there's many times that mushrooms are counterindicated, like autoimmune conditions, because most mushrooms, they are a fungi, remember. You're already having all this bad food combining, and now you're throwing in a dried fungi in with your yogurt and your blueberries and all of this. I don't think anybody really knows what's taking place when you mix this many things together. And I'm sure the human body is having a lot of trouble sorting it out too. But counterindications to mushrooms are most autoimmune conditions. In fact, when you have an autoimmune condition, we know your rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis. There's many types of autoimmune conditions that can destroy your tissue by having an overactive immune system. And so when I treat these people, I remove honey, even many herbs are jacking up your immune system. And now mushrooms are giving me more cases of autoimmune condition. And maybe the person already had a very strong immunity, or maybe they had a little itch or a little rash, and it was their immune system overacting, or they had some allergies, and then they started taking big doses of mushrooms, and now their skin's breaking out, and they're getting more hives, and the doctor says it's psoriasis, or their joints are getting bad, and they do the blood test, and it's like rheumatoid arthritis, and they're just down in the mushrooms every day, thinking that it's healthy when they have no idea, no knowledge at all of these mushrooms and their benefits, and more importantly, their counter indications. For every time you study an herb, or when I used to teach, I always tell people it's easy to remember what the herb does for you. But what you have to really remember, if you're going to be in private practice and be treating people, what you really want to not forget is the counter indications, when not to give it. So all of these things that we're talking about today, there's a time that a person could have this, and certain type of people could be fine with yogurt, while other people with respiratory congestion won't have yogurt. And even overweight people, they'll do fine with chocolate. It's a little stimulating, but since they're quite overweight, they won't really feel adverse effects of it. So there's always exceptions. Another problem with these smoothies is the use of raw vegetables, particularly kale. That was a big fad for a while. And I got a few cases of smoothie girls who we're doing a lot of kale smoothies. Yeah, they throw in the blueberries, the strawberries. It was before the mushrooms. So that was back in the kale, turmeric, goji berry days, and cacao. And so they were doing that. And the raw kale, raw cruciferous vegetables, particularly kale, uncooked, is known to be a colon irritant. That's why a lot of people get gas and bloating from it. And what happened was and then we know cacao is inflammatory. And we know the whole combination is a mess for the digestion. So what happened, some of these smoothie girls in their 20s came to me, and they started getting inflammatory colon conditions, where they were having pain in their colon. I think one even started bleeding from her rectum, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor says you have inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, and that's how they came to me. And the cause was their smoothie plus the chocolate. I mean, the coffee. There's a lot of times smoothie girls, they love coffee too, because they're trying to stay thin. They're in California. They got to fit in that bikini in the summer. So they do a lot of smoothies, and then they keep going. They have coffee. So coffee is inflammatory, and it can really tear up your intestines, particularly if it's on an empty stomach. And that's why you put cream in it or something in it to get rid of that harsh acidity. So it was but the kale and raw vegetables are counterindicated in treating IBS. So you have to understand, if a person's quite sensitive to intestinal inflammation or has had any history of it, you don't give them any raw vegetables, and never the cabbage family. Cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and they're doing a lot of kale every day in these smoothies, plus the inflammatory cacao. And then, it takes months, maybe even a year, and then they start to have the colon problems. The other problem I saw from smoothie girls, and this gave me a lot of information about smoothies because people were coming to me and still do come to me with crazy smoothies. I got a woman the other day who sent me her smoothie breakdown before the appointment, and it filled an entire page. She was throwing all of her vitamins in there and magnesium and vitamin D3 and all of these things. But and when I look at these smoothies, I tell almost all people to stop the smoothie because they're usually coming to me with a health problem. So I have to stop the smoothie. There are some, good things about them. But another thing that I saw, another health problem I saw from people who were doing a lot of smoothies, as we affectionately call them, smoothie girls, was that their menstrual period stopped. I had multiple young women in their 20s come to me, and their period had stopped. And that's because they were living off of smoothies. Now, there's no protein in there. Now, that's one problem. You become weaker with no protein. But a lot of people throw in protein powder, and there's, of course, different types of protein powder, whey protein and pea protein being the most popular. But and the pea protein is very much an irritant to the colon. And a couple scoops of this pea protein is usually insufficient. And there's very little fat in these too. I know some people pour in flax oil in there on top of it, but oil and fruit all mixed together. What a mess. But so most people don't add the fats. You ended up with a low fat diet, low protein diet, and an indigestible substance. And then you become depleted. You become nutritionally depleted. Anybody doing an extreme diet, whether it's smoothie diet, vegan diet, carnivore diet, it's just another extreme from the vegan diet, you'll end up with nutritional problems. You can't do extremes. It doesn't work for long. It'll work for a short period of time, maybe, and you could even get some short-term benefits, but extreme diets never work long term. But those are some of my experiences with smoothie girls coming to me: inflammation in the colon, bowel problems, bloating, gas, constipation, and even irritable bowel. And then, of course, their menses stopped. And that's because they're so depleted. I think the body determined this woman can't have a baby. She's not even feeding herself properly. She's living off of smoothies. I think that's what the body said. Now, somebody made a point to me that people do it because it's just convenient and they don't like to cook. I think that's a big factor here. And definitely you need to be, preparing your own meals. So what could we do instead of our beloved smoothie? Well, you could eat full meals, for example. And another problem with these smoothies, particularly in the morning, is that, they could be high in too much sugar, even though fruit isn't technically sugar. If you have enough of it in a fruit juice and you gulp it down, then, it could jack up your sugar. And in the morning, they call it the dawn effect, when the sun comes up and it hits us, our cortisol goes up, our adrenaline goes up, our blood sugar goes up, even our blood pressure. Everything kind of goes up in the morning to get us going. So that's why diabetics and people with high blood sugar learned, or I don't know if they learned, but it's known, and I definitely do it for my cases of high blood sugar, is you give them just a protein breakfast. No sweets, no grains, no nothing in the morning. You don't want to go radical and leave out all grains, which people call no carbs. It's the new radical diet. But you definitely, if you have a blood sugar issue, you just give your eggs for breakfast, for example. That's eggs and some veggies, and that's it. All protein, no grains, no fruit juice at all, because your blood sugar tends to be a little higher in the morning anyway. After you've been out running around all day long, you can get away with having a little cup of fruit juice or some fruits or something like that, even if you're diabetic, but not in the morning. And you need that protein in the morning. I mean, this is the time you put the gas in the car before you take the journey. And a smoothie is not really the type of gas we need. We need, as we learn in school and the nutritional sciences, we need fat, oil, protein, and carbohydrates. even though everybody hates carbs now, you need them to run the engine, to it all working together. There should be a certain balance. Now, certain people, overweight person needs more of, um, you know, more protein and less carbs, and a young, thinner person could use more carbs and less protein, and a dry person could use more oil than an oily person, and an overweight person. So there's always little variations. You should never just follow a certain amount of protein just based on your body weight. There's more variations than that. But and a lot of people do try to make up in these smoothies because they know there's no protein by throwing in the protein powder, but you're just making things worse. What could we do instead? Okay, so I've shot down your smoothie. It's a bad idea. I remove it from all patients. And if you have a lot of digestive problems, I usually remove most people's vitamins and supplements because they can really create digestive problems, particularly people who take them on empty stomach. And if when you do take your supplements, herbs are not supplements, even though that's what they're classified as. They're not. They're herbal medicine. They're not supplementing your diet. They're treating an organ or a system in your body. Even though people call my herbs supplements, I don't like it. I like their herbal medicine, the real medicine, the true medicine. They're not alternative. Taking little pills, little red pills with red dye number 3 in it, that's alternative. I hope you know red dye number 3 has finally been banned because it's carcinogenic and it's in your Fruit Loops, and also a lot of medications use red dye number 3 in their medications, and it's been known to be carcinogenic for decades, and Europe banned it a long time ago. So you have to think twice. If the doctor's giving you a medication with a known carcinogenic to make it red, you better think about that. But anyway, it's been banned finally, and I hope more of these carcinogenic substances are banned as well. I digress. So, I just wanted to say smoothies are not detoxing, particularly when it's cold. Now, and there's so many weight loss smoothies, detox smoothies. It's a joke. You can't detox yourself with a bunch of fruits and vegetables all mixed together. You want to detox your liver, you take herbs for your liver. You want to detox your colon, you take herbs for your colon. You want to detox and clean the mucus out of your lungs, you got herbs for it. Smoothie is really going to make all of these conditions worse because of the factors that I mentioned earlier. So what could you do instead? Cook your meals. If you got a good digestion, doesn't mean you have to have all cooked, vegetables every day. But when it's this cold, I'm not doing any salads. They're not growing. It's out of season. I have my soups. Stay warm, keep the body warm. And I'm having the root vegetables and things from the fall harvest and the squash and the gourds, not having these little leafy greens and salads in the middle of the winter time. So, you should follow your diet with the season. And that's, of course, another problem with just having smoothies. But what could you do instead? I know you're asking. You can do vegetable juice. There's many. Just keep it simple. 2 or 3 vegetables. If you're a thin type of Vata person, I've talked about different juices for different body types. There's no one juice that's good for everybody. And of course, there was that big, terrible fad of celery juice. I hope that's gone. But that was a fad. Everybody was doing celery juice. I haven't heard about it for a while. But celery juice is good for overweight people with a lot of water retention and swelling. It's a very depleting vegetable. And it does have cleansing powers, but it's cleansing the water out of you. So if you're already dry and thin person and you do celery juice, you're just going to get more dry and more depleted. But if you're a thin Vata type person and say your body's cold, you're thin, you could do roots, carrots, beets, go good together. And you can put a little lemon in it, and you can also put a little ginger in it to make it warming. So that would be a nice vegetable juice, carrot, beet, lemon, and some ginger. That's a nice, roots, pick the roots. And a little lemon just helps you kind of digest it. And you can even throw a little lemon peel if you're using a juicer. But that's a nice juice for a person who's thin and cold, you do the roots. Now, if you're overweight and heavy and you have blood sugar issues, you can't be doing carrots and beet juice. There beets and carrot juice is kind of on the sweet side. So you want to be doing like the celery with the lemon and some spinach or some leafy greens, things like that. So, but you don't want to do more than 3 or 4 different vegetables at the same time. And little lemon is always good. Now, if you're a pitta type person and you're warm, you want to do more cooling vegetables like cilantro and no ginger. Just put in like coriander and fennel and some little bit of carrot, little bit of sweet, so maybe a little celery. You should, and seasonally, you can do different juices. So there you're just taking vegetables, juiced. Of course, the first vegetable ever juiced, and I still have a champion juicer, and that was the carrots. And the carrots are, a good juice. You just have to be careful if you have high blood sugar. The juicing is a way to kind of get a bunch of vegetables in you without cooking them. And, and it can give you a little boost, get you going, and to get you through the day. So you can always do a little vegetable juicing. Fruit juicing, I mean, maybe for kids, but I think you're better off to just eat your fruit because you want all the fiber. You don't want to be juicing it and having vegetable juice and then throwing all the fiber in the trash, because it's the fiber that really keeps the blood sugar stable and helps you out the most. I would not be juicing raw kale. In most cases, this is not a good idea. And I wouldn't be throwing protein powder in yogurt. Just keep it simple. That's the main thing. Just forget the whole juicing thing. Smoothie idea, throwing everything in and thinking you're now being healthy. Now, all my clients, I would say, okay, 70, 80% coming to me with all kinds of health problems, because they always come to me after things get bad. They're all doing smoothies. And I always say, well, how much is it helping? I don't think a lot of these vitamins that you're throwing in, you're absorbing, because all this fermentation is taking place is probably, consuming a lot of the vitamins. And these vitamins need to be taken with your meals. You need to have a whole meal with fat, protein, carbohydrates, and not be extreme and do no carbs, or no dairy or no wheat. These are all extremes. Certain people won't do good with certain types of grains, but you should never eliminate all grains. And a lot of people are eliminating all fruit. I was just talking to a woman who had colon cancer, and I told her the most beneficial food for preventing cancer is the dark and vegetable fruits like blueberries, strawberries, grapes. These are the best for being like anti-cancer in nature, and they keep your colon clean, they keep your so it'd be a good idea. And somehow people got the idea that all fruits got sugar, so now it's all bad. I said, no, it's good for you, good for your colon, and good for prevent cancer. I wouldn't say it treats cancer, but you need your fruit in your diet. You don't want to leave it out. And of course, what leads to the most cancer is excess animal protein, which is what we'll probably see from the keto and carnivore people in 20 years. More colon cancer, more gallbladder problems, more liver issues, fatty liver from excess protein, animal protein. You never want to have too much protein because it's a big burden on your kidneys. And then you get, first you can get sometimes gout from the high uric acid, which is the waste product from protein. A lot of people with gout, they're having protein powders every day, or they're just big meat eaters. You never want too much protein. It's never a good idea. Too much protein contributes to tumor growths in the body. So if you're eating a lot of meat plus protein powder, then that's very risky, very risky. Long term, short term, you're not going to grow a tumor. But long-term, excess protein is actually dangerous. So, these people eating all animal protein often are, throwing in smoothies with protein powder and only making the probability of growth cancer later in life more. And of course, a lot of people have candida, and cold drinks, cold foods, fermentation, is often the cause. Even a lot of skin problems coming from bad food combining, digestive problems, colon problems, irritated colon, IBS, all coming from poor food combining. And the smoothie is the epitome of poor food combining. So eat your meals, whether you're 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, depends on the individual and your weight. But better to prepare your food, cook your food, learn to cook. Don't think it's a quick shortcut that's going to get all your vitamins and all your nutrients in, and then you don't have to worry about eating good. No, smoothies are not healthy. I hope you got the point. And like I said, I'm a person treating people every day. And even today, I had to remove smoothies from a few people's diet because I felt they were one of the causes to their poor digestion. And once you have poor digestion, well, then the whole body goes downhill and you become deficient, you become depleted, you start losing weight. And this is one reason why people doing smoothies lose weight, is because they're really just depleting themselves and they're unable to digest a lot of what they're taking in. So they end up losing weight, but then you have nutritional problems. That's not the proper way to lose weight. So I hope I educated you on the facts about drinking smoothies for your health and what you can do instead. Fruit juices, and you should really just eat your protein. There's no need to have protein powders. Just eat your protein. That's only people who really need protein powders are weightlifters, but they'll end up with, kidney failure and other things in life due to this high protein. But, if you want to put on muscle, then yeah, you can increase the protein, but long term, it's not healthy. So there's really not much value for these. Now you can simplify them down, and you could just have vegetable juice, maybe a little fruit juice in the afternoon. Okay, mix a little protein powder with your proteinless meal or something and drink it with the meal, but you could break it down and make it a little easier. But a lot of these things like the goji berries, the mushrooms, the cacao, these are all just fads, the raw kale, that can just be completely eliminated from your diet. People have been eating for the beginning of humankind, and smoothies were not on the list. Go back to just eating your carbohydrates, your grains, your protein, whether it's animal protein or vegetable protein, and your fruit in between the meals, separate from the rest. And make sure you're having plenty of oil and fat in the diet, because if you don't, then it can cause brain problems, dementia, can cause skin problems, dry skin, dry stool, degenerative bones, all from having insufficient fat and oil in the diet, which is a big problem these days. All right. I hope that helped you have a better understanding of how to take care of yourself. Feel free to contact me if you'd like me to consult and review your diet and treat your health issues with herbal remedies. I wish you all the best of health and happiness. Thank you very much.